PSVR2. It is not off to a great start, folks, which is unfortunate because the hardware itself is pretty great. I reviewed PSVR2 myself and generally gave it positive remarks because it's really easy to set up, it's super comfortable, the screens are great with OLED high-fidelity resolution, it's got good motion tracking, it's got a lot of great features, and it's got some cool games here and there. But the price point, I think, is something that a lot of people are wrestling with, especially in the current economic climate. And the end result is that the PSVR2 undersold by a lot compared to what PlayStation and Sony were hoping to sell over the course of the launch period of PSVR2. This is something that was reported by Takahashi Mochizuki via news outlet Bloomberg via the following article whose headline reads, Sony PSVR2 headset off to slow start as metaverse push sputters. So based on what Bloomberg has learned, Sony is projected to sell fewer than 300,000 PlayStation VR2 headsets in its first weeks on the market. More specifically, it is apparently likely that PSVR2 will sell about 270,000 units between its February 22nd release and the end of March, which is coming up real soon. Now, these are all still estimates. We haven't gotten official confirmation from Sony. The estimates come from research firm IDC, and if these figures end up panning out, then I'm certain that Sony won't be too enthusiastic to talk about sales numbers of PSVR2 during financial briefings, because apparently what Sony had expected to sell during PSVR2's launch period was about 2 million units. Talk about overreaching. Now, I don't know if launch window is referring to its first month or its first quarter, but if this is the pace at which PSVR2 is selling, even if launch window means the first quarter of PSVR2, even if we're talking about 3 months of sales, it seems highly unlikely that PSVR2 will reach anywhere close to 2 million units. And then assuming that launch window is referring to the first month of sales for PSVR2, we're talking about sales results that were roughly 7.4 times less than the roughly 2 million units that Sony hoped to sell during this launch window. Now, a representative of IDC, the research firm, specifically Francisco Geronimo, vice president of data and analytics, provided the following reasoning for why he believes PSVR2 is flopping right now. Consumers around the world are facing rising costs of living, rising interest rates, and rising layoffs. VR headsets are not top of mind for most consumers under the current economic climate. But you know what should be on top of your mind? Internet security, which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, a company that is dedicated to making the internet better for you by decluttering your web browsing experience and protecting you from online threats, censorship, and surveillance. One of my favorite use cases of NordVPN is being able to use one of its thousands of international servers to appear as if I'm in another country, allowing me to watch content that would normally be blocked in the US. But where NordVPN really shines is the way it basically puts a force field around your internet activity, beyond encrypting your online data, concealing your IP address and location, and keeping your online activity private. The super simple to activate and seamlessly integrated threat protection feature will fend off harmful websites, web trackers, intrusive and malicious ads, malware, infected files, you name it. This is on top of other security measures like the purchasable NordPass Password Manager add-on and the built-in dark web monitor that will let you know if sensitive information was exposed. NordVPN is just impressively comprehensive and intuitive, offering relief from intrusion and ease of mind from invasion in your online day-to-day while being effortlessly customizable. Not to mention that with one account you can protect up to 6 devices of your choice, from workstation computers to myriad mobile devices NordVPN supports. You never know when you'll fall victim to malicious actors and websites online. It's always better to be safe than sorry, so protect yourself with NordVPN and use my link nordvpn.com/yongya for an exclusive deal with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Back to the news, I do agree that the current economic situation is a significant contributing factor to why people are not interested in PSVR2, but at the same time, games are still thriving even in this economic climate. But the thing about VR is that it's still an evolving technology. There's still a lot of refinement left to be done. I don't think it's reached its full potential. It does still cause motion sickness to a lot of people, and there are enough inconveniences alongside the costs associated with getting a VR headset that VR still has too many barriers and too much friction for entry for this to become mainstream on a level that Sony wants. Not to say that there isn't potential for PSVR2 to grow significantly if it's supported properly with games that are must-plays, but those are missing right now. Don't get me wrong, there's Gran Turismo 5, Resident Evil Village for VR. Those are great experiences, but Resident Evil Village is already an old game, and playing in VR is awesome and it's very different, but it's still a game people have already played. Same with Gran Turismo 5, though racing in VR is pretty freaking awesome, would recommend. Horizon Call of the Mountain was supposed to be that big PSVR2 exclusive first-party game release that was supposed to be the killer app for PSVR2. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case. Like, the game's fine, but it's not a must-own. It's not a, okay, get PSVR2 just to play this game. PSVR2 is still missing that kind of like killer app. So Sony really needs to prioritize that. They need to make the Half-Life Alyx equivalent to the PSVR2. Now, these low sales also put a damper on Sony's strategy to build a metaverse where people can do far more than play games. Yep, Sony's trying to pursue what Meta's doing. They're trying to spread their VR headset far and wide as much as possible to establish a metaverse where they can exert economic control and no doubt sell NFTs and just find new monetization avenues, new creative ideas to try to keep that unsustainable infinite growth going for the corporation. But the metaverse has failed epically in trying to gain any kind of significant traction. Meta is wasting away billions upon billions of dollars on this thing that's just not taken off. The Horizon Worlds metaverse, which has super low user retention and even employees are struggling to find reasons to use it. And then beyond that, recently Disney and Microsoft both closed projects tied to the digital realm this month. Disney had an entire division dedicated to the metaverse with like 7,000 employees. All those 7,000 employees were laid off and that division was closed off completely. Even Disney's starting to get the picture that in its current state and proposition, the metaverse is just not a worthwhile investment. So yeah, Sony's attempt to pursue the metaverse just seems to be really poor timing. The way to sell more PSVR2s isn't by promoting metaverse, which the masses are not really interested in. It's making awesome games. I really hope that Sony doesn't pull a PS Vita here and release this amazing piece of hardware that goes unsupported, because the going got tough sort of towards the launch of the product and the product was never really given a chance. There's proof out there that a gaming platform can recover from a rough launch, like the Nintendo 3DS, for example, which released with a paltry lineup of games and sold very poorly at first, but eventually sales picked up as Nintendo supported the console with really awesome games. Hopefully PSVR 2 will see that kind of fate, will be more along the lines of a 3DS kind of journey rather than that of the PS Vita's unfortunate demise. Now, one thing that Sony does seem to be reasonably confident about is that they will surpass the roughly 5 million sales of the original PSVR goggles over the course of PSVR 2's lifetime on the market. I do think that is an attainable goal with the right support. PS5s have been selling really well. In fact, in one of the recent months, the PlayStation 5 sold more units in 1 month than any other PlayStation has ever sold in a single month. It seems like PS5 sales might outpace PS4 if they can keep the ball rolling. So there might come a time when there will be dozens of millions of PS5 owners, maybe 100 million PS5 owners, and at that point, there will be great potential for PSVR 2 to sell. Currently, there are roughly 30 million people who have purchased PS5. Of those 30 million, a fraction of a fraction decided to purchase PSVR 2 at launch. They need to make PSVR 2 a much more compelling value proposition by making the experiences in it irresistible. As long as they don't treat PSVR 2 like they did PS Vita, I think it's possible for PSVR 2 to recover and definitely surpass 5 million sales. Now, as things currently stand, PSVR 2 undersold enough that the current recommendation from analysts and research firms is that they absolutely need to cut the price right now. According to Geronimo, I suspect a price cut on the PSVR 2 will be needed to avoid a complete disaster of their new product. That's how badly PSVR 2 is selling right now. PSVR 2 currently is priced at $550, and on top of that, you need a PlayStation 5, which can cost anywhere from $400 to $500 more if you're outside of the US, because Sony increased the price of PlayStation 5 outside of the US due to component shortages. If you don't already own a PS5, that's over $1,000 right there to get the full kit to be able to play the PlayStation VR 2. And even if you own the PSVR 2, $550 is still, a pricey price point, even though I do think the value is there in terms of what the hardware offers versus the price point, but $550 is still $550. We'll see if this situation is desperate enough that Sony will end up slashing the $550 price point by a certain amount so shortly after launch, or whether they'll try to hold that price point and just try to boost the software lineup and hope that people will eventually gravitate towards this device. For now, though, it's safe to say that PSVR 2 sales have bombed at launch, far lower than what Sony was hoping and expecting, and yeah, we'll see if PSVR 2 and VR as a whole manages to survive. I feel like the VR landscape is currently plateauing when it comes to interest and the development of the technology, and there just needs to be a spark that will kickstart VR once more and give that slope an extra boost. I think PSVR 2 has the potential to do that, but the equivalent of PS5 system sellers, like say God of War Ragnarok, has to be there on PSVR 2 for people to be like, all right, I have to get this thing. I have to play this game. I have to see what the buzz is all about. But in the meantime, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current sales estimates surrounding PSVR 2 and what you think this means for the future of the platform. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.